Well, the Bruins basketball team might be filling up a roster spot. We've already talked about them. Let's talk about them some more here on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this episode your first listen each and every day. And hey, the podcast is free wherever you get your episodes, and it's available on YouTube. So like, comment, and subscribe. Become an everyday listener of the Locked On UCLA podcast. Well, we've been trying almost for months, since March now, and now we're bordering about 4 months now since close to when the Bruins lost in the tournament. It's been a little under 4 months. What is this roster from 23 into 24 going to look like for Mick Cronin? And while we've got two names truly circled as the guys to fill the roster, now we're getting a little bit more of a clearer perspective of that it might actually happen, at least for one of them. And then while we're waiting on another, we believe UCLA might get these two guys, Berke Buyuktuncel and then Aday Mara, who these are names you've probably been hearing or reading in various UCLA sites, hearing from me as the Bruins try to fill out this roster. And the only roster news we've had from UCLA recently was the commitment from Eric Freeney in the previous week over just before the 4th of July, which I hope you guys celebrated accordingly and safely. In the meantime, reading from what Bro Report put, and even the fan side for UCLA and the Sports Illustrated site, saying that the Turkish forward, Berke Buyuktuncel, is looking like it's a go. So far, they said the word sources is the guy who they had referred to as the unnamed international product for a long time, Buyuktuncel, who had been playing in the FIBA U19 team, or is going to eventually beat the U.S. team on the Turkish team, average about 11 points per game on the FIBA U19 World Cup. This is a guy who's got some talent. I've talked about him, and I talked about him a few episodes ago where, one, it looked like he had actually said no to UCLA. That was via a Euro Hoops website. But then reading this article from Bro Report talked about how initially it looked like he was not accepted for admission. It said he was turned down for admission last September, but apparently, according to what Bro Report's saying, all the other reports, he has actually been accepted academically at UCLA, and it's basically a done deal. Somewhat like Aday Mara, except he doesn't have to deal with a contract situation, even though when I was reading this article about 7 months ago, it was written that he said no to UCLA, wanted to stay with this team and build until he was ready to go to the NBA, except it seems like the 6'9", 215-pound lefty forward who could really fill the spot vacated by Jaime Jaquez Jr., someone who's a good defender, a lot of intensity, a lot of energy, both used by Bro Report. And if you go watch his highlights, I've watched them on YouTube. I watched them, what Bro Report posted. He's a guy that is high energy. And if he can bring that energy defensively for UCLA, then all of a sudden the Bruins can have an extremely intense team with a lot of guys that nobody knows for at least UCLA fans. And while we've got all these guys coming over internationally, including some guys on the roster from last year in terms of Dylan Andrews, you've got the McClendons, guys who are trying to make their name known as well as a returner. We've got a lot of exciting intrigue for this team, which leaves it to go to the next point. While Buyuktuncel looks like he's good to go for UCLA, Aday Mara, a guy we've been talking about for even longer than Buyuktuncel, having him essentially tell his team, I'm going to go to the U.S. collegiate route, and he's basically chosen UCLA. As long as everything works, it should be a go. But for Mara, what I've been reading about him was a good NBA comparison. If he can come to UCLA, this is the type of player the Bruins are going to get. And I was reading a little write-up on the NBA Draft Room written within the week, and it talked about how Mara is a 7'3", 245-pound big man, filling up more and more as the days go on. And while he's not a quick, agile leaper or the most fleet of foot necessarily, he's got elite skill. And one of those things that we've seen by big men in the NBA, which is what this article writes about, is he's an elite passer. You can see that in highlight tapes, stands above everybody else, can find the open man, and his ability to quote-unquote drop dimes is what can help separate him from the rest and help UCLA this year, especially if they can shoot from downtown. He can find those open guys, whether it be a back cutter, whether it be a three-point shooter, if he stands at the free throw line as a good extended four-man, as UCLA might use him. So he can shoot the three. He has a good mid-range game. He's always a threat to go for a lob and a jam. And then his defensive abilities are to alter shots and block shots easily as a 7'3" big man. But he may not be as athletic as Aday Mara is, because he is one of the most freakishly athletic people UCLA has and might have for a long time as the reigning Pac-12 freshman of the year, going alongside a 7'3" center in Mara. That should make for quite the fearsome duo in the paint to try and get rebounds and, most importantly, trying to score in the paint, which is what Mara can bring as he tries to bulk up and prepare for the NBA. And another thing is the class of 24 is expected to be a very weak draft class. So Mara has been rumored to be a lottery pick, top 14 picks in the NBA draft, top 10 in those aspects, which means while it might be a weak draft, he could be a lottery pick. And who is his comparison in the NBA? Well, the article eventually comes to two main comparisons. Zydrunas Ilgauskas, you remember, Big Z, the 7'3" Lithuanian, played a long time with the Cavs. Ilgauskas, who could be a good defender, rebounder, and was a modern big in that day and age. But then the other comparison given to Aday Mara is Pau Gasol, who, they say he can be a little bit taller, but not as mobile as Gasol, but he has similar skill sets and overall a similar game. Mara is an advanced passer and facilitator who can work as the offensive hub. And it's a little different considering, as they say, comparing him to a quote-unquote or to a Hall of Famer overall. But the big thing is he can be an elite NBA talent if he develops more and more. And while he might not be that elite generational talent that everybody's talking about with Victor Wembanyama, you're starting to add guys who want to go to the NBA, right? The article finishes with talking about Ilan Fibleul, Jan Vire. You've got Dylan Andrews, who's growing and growing. And we'll see what that means with Berke Buyuktuncel, who wants to go and become an NBA prospect, right? And he's had his own comparisons as being a good forward slasher combo. So when you've got someone who could be a lottery pick, you've got everybody high on Vide, who's had some good moments as the junior EuroLeague MVP playing for the Real Madrid team. He could be a one and done. Fibleul's got some NBA intangibles. This is a team that could be very athletic, very fun to watch. And with Buyuktuncel, all but a Bruin, Aday Mara, who is getting some NBA Hall of Fame comparisons by Draft Room, although it's not a consensus between all the people making mock drafts of the class of 24. It is brought to be an important get for UCLA to bring the 7'3" big man once it's finalized, if it's finalized. So Buyuktuncel all but finalized. Mara still waiting on any different news, but at the moment, as I've said before, might drag out into July. And hopefully by the time the Bruins go on that foreign tour, the overseas tour, right before the start of school, Mara should be with the Bruins and suited up playing in his native homeland. In the meantime, that's going to do it for UCLA Hoops because, hey, big news. They might get one player. Mara is getting some lofty expectations put on his shoulders as he slowly, we hope, turns into an official UCLA Bruin within the coming weeks, coming days, hopefully, if that contract situation gets sorted out. And then we still got to wait for who that next assistant coach is that can fill the void, maybe not completely, not entirely, of the international recruiting. It's probably going to be Mick Cronin the most part, but still you need to find an assistant coach that can help bring that intensity for UCLA moving forward. Well, we're going to talk more UCLA football coming up because, hey, their recruiting strategies have been toasted by some national experts. But we'll tell you more about that in just a moment. Well, we're going to move on by telling you about FanDuel Sportsbook because, hey, FanDuel Sportsbook, if you want to get your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel, this is the time right now. You can get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. You bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's if you're a new customer. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Check it out. Your app, just know the FanDuel app is safe, secure, super easy to use. You can get paid instantly which is why there's no better place to bet on the MLB than on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get up to $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball, and with us here at Locked On. Cruising on into segment 2 of the Locked On UCLA podcast. It's Zach with you guys after a long week off, enjoying time in between the days off and everything in between, just waiting for some UCLA news. But some things have been written more and more about Chip Kelly's recruiting strategy. And while I'm a little bit more positive than most might say, there was an athletic article written within the last week or two and brought up again by another UCLA fan site in which it was saying how the Bruins are getting kind of roasted by an athletic writer, recruiting expert in Adam Gorney, who talked about Chip is going to do what he's going to do. This is his quote about Chip Kelly's recruiting strategy. Chip is going to do what he's going to do. This is what it basically comes down to. When I go to games on Friday nights, I've seen Lincoln Riley 3 or 4 times. I've seen Dante Williams 10 times. I've never seen Chip Kelly at a game. If you want to run your program that way, that's fine. He's definitely smart. There's no doubt about it. He's a great offensive mind, but better players are going to better teams. That's the only way I can really put it. So this is Gorney, who is officially actually the Rivals national recruiting analyst, but this was written in The Athletic a little bit longer before the end of July. So what he's saying is he doesn't like how UCLA doesn't go out and show their faces to all these high school recruits, right? You've got the basketball team and the football team, the men's basketball team, who are kind of pivoting in interesting strategies. Mick Cronin's been going for more of an international recruiting strategy, although that might change with the departure of Ivo Simovic. And then you've got Chip Kelly, who's been truly going after guys in the portal, but his high school overall composite recruiting rankings aren't going to reflect that, whether it be in the Pac-12 or soon in the near future in the Big Ten recruiting rankings. Which is why if you go to a 24/7's ranking site or any other ranking site about composite rankings or UCLA's class of 24 recruiting class looks like, they're 15th out of 16 Big Ten teams. That's not looking too good for a team that wants to prove themselves as one of the cream of the crop, one of the top teams in the Big Ten as a recruiting savant, as a guy who can go hit the portal. You want to be able to go swing and get those big recruits. And maybe Chip Kelly hasn't gotten the big guys yet or gone after those guys. But here you go. You've got UCLA, who is 15th out of 16 teams. They've got 9 commits compared to every other team in the Big Ten. They've all got double-digit commits, where UCLA is the only team in the class of 24 that does not have double-digit commits at the recording of this podcast. They are crystal ball to a receiver from Sierra Canyon, Quasi Gilmer, who is someone who's been taking official visits throughout his summer, a 3-star, maybe a 4-star composite receiver, 6'2" product that is crystal ball to UCLA by a couple of experts. I know there's a linebacker making his decision after the recording of this episode. I think Dylan Williams, the Long Beach Poly product, is looking to make his decision. I know UCLA should be in the final of that. I'm not sure he'll go to UCLA, but still, even if UCLA could get commits from both of those guys right now, right here, they would still be at the bottom in terms of commits and probably still near the bottom in terms of the recruiting rankings overall. And we know UCLA likes to pile on the recruits after the season in the transfer portal, but not a lot of people don't agree with it. I talked about it in a previous episode where someone had linked UCLA's build and rise as to one as close to Stanford in a previous decade. And now you've got Gorney, the Rivals recruiting expert, via this athletic article about overall recruiting, not just specifically to UCLA, but he was targeting Chip Kelly in that quote. It's talking about UCLA's got to up the ante. You're going to the next level in football territory in the Midwest and going to Big Ten country, and you're not stepping it up right away. How does that work? How do you not make your face known in the high school games? But for what it's worth, Chip Kelly believes in this strategy. That's where he's going. He wants proven, developed players. You get a Carson Steele. You've got Schlee competing for a job. You've even brought in Garbus, who is a transfer already, and he's been in the system for quite a few years now. Those are all things the Bruins are weighing as they build forward, and only time will tell if the Bruins will benefit from it. Maybe Chip Kelly wants to get a couple of guys, and then they go after some 5 stars, maybe a couple of more 4 stars. I know the Bruins have some borderline 3/4 star recruits right now in their commit list. That's up to 9 currently for the class of 24. But not everybody agrees. I'm a little more positive. Of course, we're excited coming off the big commit in December about Aday Mara and getting all those transfer portal guys. But again, those guys turn over a little quicker than guys who you bring in from high school and can build them up for close to 3, maybe 4 years, sometimes 2 with a red shirt in your program. And you just wonder how much that's going to help UCLA to be that Stanford comparison to an anonymous coach in the college football ranks, or are they going to get ripped? And this is the demise of Chip Kelly. I know that's where a bunch of UCLA fans are going to weigh each way. They're going to kind of go, yes, no. I'm positive, but we just have to see how it plays out at the end of the Pac-12 season and to that gauntlet in year 1 of the Big Ten. Either way, UCLA, look out for Quasi Gilmer. I've mentioned that name right now. He is someone that is maybe going to make a commitment soon to UCLA. He is crystal ball to the Bruins, and we'll see if there's any other commitments to UCLA coming up in the next recruiting cycles. The Bruins are throwing out offers left and right in classes of 24, 25, almost maybe pushing it out to 26, trying to get their best looks at some of the better offensive linemen, running backs, whether they be local products, whether they're big offensive linemen in other states. They are getting their feet, they're getting their hands dirty. They're going down in the recruiting trails and doing their best to build the Bruins Big Ten team of the future. Speaking of the future, what future NBA stars who once donned the blue and gold are taking their talents to the Summer League? We're going to talk about those guys and some who have already dominated and shown some bright spots in the California Classic before the NBA Summer League. All that and more in just a moment in the final segment of Locked On UCLA. Final segment of Locked On UCLA. Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer with you guys. If you kind of looked at the UCLA Athletics website, they gave us a nice little easy build as to the 8 UCLA Bruins who are representing UCLA in the NBA Summer League, whether they played 4 years, 5 years, 1 year. We can tell you about them all. So this is the list of the Summer League Bruins this year, some having more solidified spots, some needing the Summer League to prove themselves as true professionals in the NBA level, or at least get to some big-time contracts. You've got Amari Bailey, Jules Bernard, and yes, these aren't all Bruins who played it last year. It could have been last year or the year before. You got Bailey, Bernard, Tiger Campbell. Jalen Clark is technically on an NBA Summer League roster. And then you've got Jaime Jaquez Jr., Johnny Juzang, David Singleton, and Peyton Watson, who's coming off the NBA title with the Denver Nuggets. So some players played one season, played up to 30 games. Some have played as many as 164, like David Singleton. And you've got some Bruins who are trying to make a name for themselves, right? Singleton, who's with the Hawks, I've talked about it, looking to make that roster spot with some good three-point shooting for a team that didn't shoot the three that well. This is a key summer for these 10 days, 7th of July all the way to the 17th of July, where Singleton can earn himself a roster spot or maybe put himself on some NBA teams' radars if it's not with the Hawks initially, if for some reason it doesn't work out there. Tiger Campbell, I know we have had big-time debates. He could be a good ball handler coming off the bench at his best in the NBA and be a good floor general potentially if things work out, but he is on a summer league deal only with the Orlando Magic, as we'll see how he plays in these 10-day stretch. Can he earn himself a spot? Will he get himself that G League contract, or will he have to go overseas to continue his playing career? And then you've got the interesting ones, right? You've got Juzang, who just got called up at the end of the season to play with the Jazz. You've got Bernard, who played basically the whole season in the G League with the Motor City Cruise and the Capital City Go-Go, which is the Detroit affiliate and the Washington affiliate. So those two are trying to get more NBA playing time, right? Bernard's trying to put his name on the map. Juzang wants to solidify himself. Even Peyton Watson, he's a guy that got some postseason playing time, but wants to solidify an extended playing career, even though he's coming off an NBA championship with the Denver Nuggets, their first in franchise history. And then you've got the two fun ones who have already made a name for themselves throughout the middle of the week with that California Classic, all the way out with the Hornets and the Heat. You've got Amari Bailey and you've got Jaime Jaquez Jr. Bailey, who showed the ups with the dunks and the highlight reel slams. He had 11.5 points and 3.5 rebounds in his first couple of games which is technically the NBA Summer League, back in Sacramento on Monday and Wednesday earlier in the week. We didn't really talk about it, but he showed some big-time moves. Jaime Jaquez Jr., who put up, I believe, 22 against the Lakers earlier, had a big-time dunk, then dealt with a little bit of some shoulder problems. It was only 1 for 6 in Game 2. He's technically averaging 13 points per game and 2 rebounds a game in the NBA Summer League contests that were played out in Sacramento. So those two Bruins have already somewhat made a name for themselves. Jaquez Jr., before his first Summer League game, actually got his contract signed, which is important, right? Bailey wanting to earn himself. I believe they said Bailey had some big numbers, even outplayed Brandon Williams, too, at a significant margin from the 6 fouls and 6 turnovers to what Bailey put up. He looked good. But Jaquez, whose name is going to get thrown around quite a bit, right, with Damian Lillard asking for a trade out of Portland, Miami wanting to be that big, perfect fit for the two franchises as they want to win a title soon. Jaquez, as that first-round pick, is someone that they might have to throw and include in that deal. But with him signing that contract earlier in the week, he has to, or at least the team, the Miami Heat, have to wait at least 30 days before he can be traded, which means A, they're not putting him on the radar to be traded, B, a deal is not imminent at any close juncture, or C, that they're just giving themselves time to see how the deal plays out. And it's good to see that Jaquez has an official contract, but you just wonder if he'll be with the Miami Heat, who have to wait to the end of July before they could deal him. As much as we said it's a perfect fit for that franchise, if they're going to go after Dame Dalla, go after Damian Lillard, sometimes as much as we get excited, you put on the cap, you put on that Miami Heat jersey a couple of times, you get excited about that team that drafted you. That's not where you're going to end up. And sometimes that's not even where you're going to play your first official NBA game with, even if it's only a couple months later after the draft. And that's what Jaquez Jr. might have to see in the business side of things. Despite being the 18th overall pick, what seemingly is a perfect marriage between player, team, style, and everything, as long as that shoulder's okay, he kind of bumped it, I think, during the most recent game, it would be a perfect fit for him to stay in Miami. Although he could get a lot of time if Portland makes that deal, and Miami are the two that make that deal for Damian Lillard, which would be a blockbuster, and you'd see Jaquez in the middle of a big-time deal. But it's nice to see he's got that deal. Bailey can try and outplay lottery picks, as he was supposed to be a lottery pick, or have with all the hype coming out of high school. What if he does that to build himself in Summer League? And then you've got all these other Bruins who are trying to earn themselves more playing time, more contracts, a consistent either NBA contract, maybe a G League contract, as they all try to further their NBA dreams. So those are all the things right now that's happening for the Summer League right before it starts, at least when we drop this episode, or close to when it starts. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch how the Bruins play over the next week and a half stretch. But stay tuned for UCLA players and cheer them on as they play in the Summer League. Got a lot of them in the Summer League this year. In the meantime, get your hands up, Bruins fans. We're going to get that A-clap going in just a moment. Stay tuned for more Locked On UCLA content. We'll be throwing out more. Will they get more football commits? I know they've got someone in their final 5 coming up who's going to commit, maybe to UCLA, maybe not. And then you've got players who are trying to build that future class for UCLA football. And for UCLA basketball, Mick Cronin still got those final spots to officially solidify. Now we're just waiting on the official word for all the Bruins and coaching staff spots to be filled. Other than that, I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer signing off on Locked On UCLA. Hands up, Bruins fans. A-clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fights. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.